alive.
We're giving this a second try real quick, mi gente.
Let's see if I can...
Let me,
Now I think it's working.
All right, either way.
Yep.
We should be ready
Hey,
now.
we're live.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah,
Hold on, we're
I
going to
got
start right now.
notification.
That one viewer is me, so... Okay.
Ready? Bueno, mi gente, we're back at it again with another episode of La Verdad podcast, and this is your boy Christian. We're actually live right now, so I just wanted to say hi to the Facebook group. If you're listening to the podcast, it's probably Thursday already, so we're not live at that moment. We're gathered here today, and it's a pretty cool crowd, so we have the girls with us again.
Yes.
Hello.
Vfig.
Nati.
So how are you guys doing?
Good.
Good.
I'm
Liking the new
excited for
setup.
this. This setup, I'm loving it. Now I got the table. We're coming up.
Yeah, we wanted to have like a table set up. Gives it more of a, I think it's more relaxed when I have the table because before it's like you don't know what to do with your hands and your feet and how to sit down and where to face.
You can hide your, belly.
So here. I know this weekend has been historical. It's been a historical weekend. Yeah. I feel like everything that has happened in my life so far, like we had the first black president, the Cubs won the World Series. You know what I'm saying? Everything that has happened in my life right now.
What a comparison there.
It's an awesome comparison. What do you mean? Nothing?
Very historical moments, Nati.
It has definitely been historical. It's like I could go back and when I'm a viejito, I could tell my family and my kids and my grandkids all the crazy stories that I've seen and all the things that I've seen throughout my
Where were you when
life.
the Cubs were in the World Series?
So hopefully at that time there'll be a lot more other World Series that we're winning. So it's not just that one time 100 years ago that it happened. But aside from historical moments, we definitely wanted to talk about some very big things that have happened this weekend. So we were able to bring in a fellow verdadero, I want to say, somebody that listens to the show. He's a big fan. He actually reached out to us a couple months ago in regards to an immigration Know Your Rights conference, right? Or a panel discussion that they were having. So we have here with us today Rigo Fernandez, who is a board member for the 49th Democratic Ward, right?
Yep.
So thank you for joining us today.
It's an honor to be on, guys. This is cool.
Yeah.
This is really cool for me.
So thank you. I know you're from the area, so hopefully you didn't get lost coming all the way over here.
No, definitely not. From the area, I'm also a big Cubs fan. I was actually at one of the World Series games.
No way.
Oh, my God.
It's a pretty cool thing for me. But yeah, actually lived in the neighborhood. I grew up here for a few years, so it was definitely nice coming back.
Nice. And like I was mentioning right before we got into the whole Cubs thing and all that, is that this weekend was very historical because we not only did we get a new president, which a lot of people were not on board with, there was also some real big protests and real big marches. So aside from that, too, I know one of the real big things that we talk about in this podcast is Puerto Rico, and Obama in his last couple of days of administration granted a pardon, not pardon, but there's another word for it. Oscar Lopez Rivera. So pardon will be like if he completely got rid of all his clemency. I'm sorry. Clemency is the word. Okay. Clemency. Mm-hmm. So he reduced the sentence for Oscar Lopez. So Oscar Lopez, we'll see you soon here in Chicago.
And on our podcast.
In May.
It will be awesome to have him on the podcast. So he'll be joining us here in Chicago in May, not in the podcast, but in the city of Chicago, and I'm sure all of us are going to Here's hoping. So that was real big, because the Latino community here in Chicago has put a huge push for him, mostly because of all the resources that he was able to bring when he was in the community. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I could just mention is, the Pedro Albizu Campos High School was one of his doings here in the city of Chicago. So we're happy that that's happening. Obviously, there's always going to be people that are not on board with that do not agree with it. So I'm sure they have their own opinions behind it, but I'm happy that someone that people have fought for and something that people have fought for is actually coming into fruition now. Mm-hmm. And Obama had cleared them out before we got this crazy administration that we're about to face. Aside from that, I got to see the inauguration. I don't know if you guys watched it.
I did not. No.
A lot of people were kind of protesting it, and they didn't want to watch it. I was watching it because I'm intrigued by what the guy was going to say.
Mm-hmm. So, curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity of what he was gonna say. I wanted to see the turnout. I know a lot of people were protesting against it.
Yeah.
If you saw that there was a lot of empty seats, and
right, embarrassingly empty. It's crazy.
Yeah. And
so
one of the
saw it
biggest.
too, then.
I did see it because I follow President Obama. If Obama says he's going to be there, then I gotta stick it out with him. And it was crazy to me how much they just they even had to shorten the parade. It's usually like 4 hours, something like that. They cut it down to just 90 minutes.
Wow.
He couldn't handle it. Trump couldn't handle seeing all these empty seats. I heard they were giving out premium passes at the metro, the train over there. So it's just it blows my mind that this is the guy that we have coming into office. But that's what
I guess I'm curious too. Just we all have to accept it is what it is, right? Regardless of how we feel, and we can continue to protest and fight and whatever. But right now, this is the reality, and I guess I'm just curious to see
what he does.
A lot of times, like one of the ways that I try to battle, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I hate Trump, not my president," etc. I could take the same mentality. I don't like it. But I think we need to focus on on the people that actually make our day-to-day happen, which is the leaders in our community, right? The politicians that make the day-to-day stuff happen, especially in our community. So like the aldermans, the governor, mayor, people that actually deal with what we're doing. The president, it's kind of far up there, so it's not so much that you could do.
He's got other things to worry about.
Yeah, right. I see it as more, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's my opinion on it, but I see like the president as being more of like our liaison to the world, as opposed to what's happening within our communities, right? So if I want something to really happen between my community and my block, I need to talk to my alderman. It's not like I'm going to send a letter to the president and it's going to happen, It might not. So when I see people complaining, I'm like, you know what? Get involved. Try to figure out what you could do so that your community gets better. Right. So I'm sure you probably deal with that a lot on a daily basis.
Hearing you guys talk about it, it warms my heart. That's exactly what I did. So, a lot of people don't even know what the aldermen do in the neighborhood, but they complain, oh, well, the streets are dirty, or, nobody's fixing our roads, or, I'm not happy with this building that's coming in, or I don't like that there's not enough affordable housing in the neighborhood. But nobody knows that they can call their alderman or go on their alderman's website. They can complain about the mayor. Talk to the mayor. The mayor walks around the city. I've met him a couple times, not from any event. I was walking out of a subway and I ran into the mayor. Kind of a deal. So go talk to them. Call your alderman. Call your representatives. I agree. As much as I would like to see a president whose values agree with my own values, we have a lot of big issues locally. So your alderman, huge issues. Your alderman, your state senator, your congresswoman. Your state representative. We have a lot of people here we need to worry about, and and also keep on their toes to make sure our voices are heard.
Yeah. Well, isn't that what was happening? Like everyone's this big thing about I don't know her title, but with education that she's supposed to be this
DeVos,
and everybody's like she has no idea what she's saying, and they recorded her interviews, and she didn't want to state yes or no to just simple questions, But do you think it's like a lack of, not education, but do you think maybe the reason why people are complaining and not doing anything is because they don't know they can reach out to these community leaders? Or
I also think it's fear. Is the fear of media plays a big role in it too. Unfortunately, they're bringing this person in that doesn't know anything about X, Y, or whatever, and they're gonna mess everything up. They're gonna turn everything back to the 40s or the 30s or 50s. So the media plays a big role on it, and in reality it's not necessarily going to happen. It might happen in the long run, who knows, but it's not going to be like from day one to day two overnight. It's not going to happen
but I guess I'm saying when I was younger, I didn't know that I had access to political figures in that sense,
so I guess what's the lack or
why is it that I didn't know that I can go call or write a letter to my alderman or whoever's in my community? I didn't know I had that option. So I don't know, maybe it's just because of the media or the way that they're spoken of. It's like I felt like they were just so high up there, like, okay, what am I gonna do?
I've talked to a lot of fellow Latinos that feel the same way, and unfortunately we grow up with this mentality of all their higher ups you don't question power
instead
right?
of just they're just
instead of
people.
like just people. Yeah, he eats and shits just like you do. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like you should be able to reach out to them and talk to them. I was fortunate enough to be around my grandmother, who was a huge advocate. She was big about voicing her opinion, right? So she will go to Springfield to fight for bilingual education, and she taught me "quien dijo miedo," right? That term where, you know, don't be scared. Just because they wear a tie, they still eating shit just like you do. They still, you know, they're still human beings like you. So I guess, you know, the big thing is lack of knowing where to go, right? And taking that barrier down of, hey, I should be able to talk to you just like talk to that politician just like I talk to you, you know? But aside from that, like, now that we have Rigo here, I do want to ask a couple questions. I know that we've had some discussions in regards to immigration, right? And I'm not really well versed on it. Vfig might be a little bit more. She did some immigration classes, right?
Yeah, I used to work in Humboldt Park, and they had a lot of just adult services or services for the community. Unfortunately, just because it was running on a grant and we lost it, unfortunately that service was lost. So I was doing, we were helping people with their green cards basically apply for citizenship and become a citizen. So I did like the education part. I didn't really know too much about immigration or like the legal side of things. My boss, quote unquote, was the one that knew all of that. So he handled that side every time we had people come in and, you know, want to be naturalized. It was kind of like, okay, he does that part. I can maybe help them complete their like 50-page application, which is ridiculous. And then I was the one helping them prepare for the actual test. So, you know, my knowledge is limited, but I know a little bit, and it's just, we were talking about it before you had come in here, and you can probably give us more information, but just the amount of people that don't know what services are available to them and what services are free, that people are out here paying so much money. And, you know, I was joking around, like, hey, if anybody wants to study for the test, I got you. Like, I can help you. I have all this stuff. So
yeah, that's, you know, it's interesting to kind of bring that stuff up. So I guess, you know, I'll take a few steps back and make this connection. So as a board member for the Democratic Party of the 49th Ward, you know, I'm Latinx. I moved up to Rogers Park about 2 years ago, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get involved. Same as a lot of my peers, a lot of my friends, a lot of my family. None of my family members are involved in politics. So, you know, you had your grandma, you know, get involved. I didn't have anybody like that. We were big on education, and the reason we pushed education was because we wanted our voices to be heard. And when I got to school, I figured out how to get my voice heard, right? So I asked around. I looked online, did a lot of Google searches, and I said, okay, well, I live in Chicago. Where can I go in Chicago to kind of get resources? And that's when I figured out, I did a little bit of research on the website, found out that different groups have aldermen, or different wards have aldermen. I found out what a ward was, right? So wards come up in different neighborhoods. Rogers Park actually happens to be one of the few wards. I think it may be the only one that is one ward. One neighborhood is one ward. So
so it doesn't go into other, like this one is like Hermosa Park, Belmont Cragen.
Right. Yeah, our ward is just Rogers Park. Sometimes the borders change a little bit with Edgewater and Westridge, but it's just Rogers Park, and that's what makes it kind of an interesting space for all of us, right? So I got to figure out who some of the local committees were, who was on these boards, and they all have their own websites. So, you know, our alderman is Joe Moore. He has his own website. The Democratic Party of the 49th Ward, which I'm a board member of now, they have their own website, or they're on Facebook. And I'm like, well, I can get on Facebook. I can message somebody on there, and just as easily as anybody else. And I wanted to know, hey, you know, how do I get involved? What events are you guys throwing? And then I met them at a rally where they were just registering people to vote for, you know, upcoming elections. Like we know these elections are coming up. They want people registered. They want people to say, you know, how they feel about what's going on in Chicago, specifically up there in the 49th Ward. You know, what can they do about it? So I went out there, I started talking to people, and I met exactly who I would be, you know, who would be representing me. I met Joe Moore, I met his staff, I met some of the other community leaders there, and they said, come out to the meeting. You know,
Yeah.
they're not trying to restrict you from coming. They just come out to the meeting, kind of a deal. And after going to a few meetings is when, you know, I wanted to get more involved because, and I'll be blunt, you know, it's pretty white. Rogers Park is very white. When you go to some of these meetings, it looks very white. There's a few blacks in there, and there's a few Indian folks there. I was maybe one of 3 Latinx faces that I saw there.
Did that like make you feel like, okay, these are the people representing me? Did you feel like a certain type of way? Like, damn, where's my voice?
You know, where's my voice?
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I felt. And it wasn't any fault of their own,
right?
Because they had tried.
Just, lack of representation, right? No one was actually stepping up, right?
Right. And let me tell you, man, because they tried these events that they had. They have translators there. They have documents and flyers in English and Spanish, and they have an older residence base in Rogers Park. So instead of doing as much social media, they do a lot more flyering. They flyer on all people's apartment doors, in English and Spanish, grassroots type stuff. We're pushing a little bit more social media now. So hopefully that helps, but then they don't just do it in Spanish. We have a big African immigrant population there, so they try to get translators for that. It's a big push, and you know we're trying to figure out what the connect is now to get more people educated. That's one of the reasons I sought you guys out. I wanted to hear from the Latinx, Latina populations and see what we can tell them, what they can tell us about making these connections. So.
And I think now that you brought that up, like what can we do, right? And it's one of our duties, right, as a podcast or just as La Verdad, that we want to be able to be the voice of the people and kind of bring that conversation to them, right? So I feel like a lot of times the Latino community, especially when you talk about immigration, right, it's this fear that they feel, right? I should not be there. I should not say, or if I'm there, I'm already showing that I'm an immigrant, or this word that they use, illegal immigrant, right?
Illegal immigrant.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was this whole know your rights, right? Now that we have a new administration in office, I feel like people are going to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Start using the whole, I'm going to call it la migra on you. You know, that whole fear mongering thing that they use. It used to happen back in the day in factories. It even happened a lot during the Obama administration. People will just say, you know, I'm going to call amiga, especially in factories, because other people get pissed off. So what are some of the basics that our listeners should know that they could share with other people or even themselves if they're immigrants and illegal immigrants, right? Quote unquote. What should they know, and what are some of the basics?
So first things first, right? Chicago is a sanctuary city, and what that means is the city is not going to be holding you accountable for what federal immigration policies are. That's moot. So if anybody's saying they're going to call La Migra, or CPD is going to come knocking on your door if you put your name on a list or anything like that, that's not the case. It's not happening. Our mayor, Ron, for better or for worse, that he's our mayor, and he said, regardless of the Trump administration, this isn't happening. We aren't going to be pushing forward through this. And there are cities like this all across the country. I know New York also does it. I think you're right. Yeah. So there's a lot of places that do this sanctuary city, and we are one of them. So don't be afraid. Yeah. Don't be afraid. Speak up. This event that we had back in December, we brought in Fred Sau, who's with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, and he talked about some of the classes that they hold, that they do events and stuff. And it's just like the work you were talking about. What they do is they have these classes to help people go through the naturalization process. And you saw these lengthy applications. You said 50 pages.
Yeah, they doubled them, because when I first started, it was like 10 pages double-sided, and now I think it's 20 pages double-sided. Wow. I think your whole life story is in there, and I think people just filling that out, they're like scared.
Yeah. And all the documents weren't always in Spanish. There was a lot of times they were just in English, and people didn't know how to read, or they would bring their kids to help translate, and kids don't have the vocabulary to help you go through the naturalization process.
Even the form itself is very confusing. Like, for example, the first part, where you put your name, it says family name.
Yeah.
If you translate that into Spanish, people are going to start writing all their all my husband's name is this, and they're asking for your last name.
Last name.
It doesn't say apellido on there. It says family name. Yeah. Who the hell's going to know that means your last name?
Exactly. And so they have these services where they're going to help organize. They have these services where they help organize immigrants, get them together, help them go through the naturalization process. If you cannot afford to do it, they have fee waivers occasionally. They try and help you out with it.
What's do you know what the fee is for for that?
You know what? I think it's different for different nonprofits because they have different grants and different funding sources. Okay. I'm not fully sure on that.
So it might vary.
It might vary. Okay. But a lot of these places will try and, if they're legitimate, will try and help you with the payment process. You know, the people that do this don't do this to screw people over.
Right.
It's these, you know, great.
Where I was at, you could like apply for this. So there was a form that you fill out to apply to get it.
Do you know like a ballpark estimate of how much?
Well, so so like we didn't charge anything. Like our services were free, and then I don't know if he was like a legitimate immigration lawyer, but he knew enough where he could tell you so much. Like up to this, you know, I'm not gonna charge you because this is stuff that I can tell you. Like
right.
And so he would try to give them legal advice. Let's just say that, right? As far as their process in their case, and he was like, you know, tell me everything basically, because depending on what you put in your application, you want to be careful. You want to make sure you're putting everything correctly. You know, people that try to be manipulative and get married just for papers, like they're gonna grill the shit out of you. So you better have everything right. So he, you know, he was there to definitely help people, but the only fee wasn't for us. That's going to the government, and that I think.
So it's pushing the hundreds, like it's between
Yeah,
that's mostly
and that was
what
just for the application. Then you got to think about, you got to pay to get your photos, your passport photos. If you don't have, you know, passports, or you don't have that, you got to pay for that. So a lot of it was for the state or for the federal government. It wasn't necessarily for us.
Okay, yeah. So in the passing the $100 range. I
well,
guess it's,
you know, it all depends on what the naturalization process is for you, right? As an individual, you can do, your costs are going to be different than if a family kind of comes in, or if you have one person who's just a spouse, and they hit those people pretty hard because they're like, oh, you're just marrying for a green card, you're marrying for citizenship. But the fees will be different. But the important thing is to kind of to go there in the first place and talk to somebody about what your situation is and get their input on it. You know, and if they require something about payment, you know, talk to them about what other options you have if you can't afford it. If you can't afford it, you know, good on you. Now, for everybody who can't, you know, ask.
And before we go on there, mi gente, we're gonna put some of these links also on the podcast description, and we'll put it on our website because I know it's kind of hard. You're probably jotting down different links right now. But
a lot of the resources that like were free, and a lot of stuff that where I got stuff from was uscis.gov.
Yes, yeah.
So and you know, that's a legitimate website. But even like we were talking about like applications and forms, like it's very good. Like he was saying, like to talk to somebody first, because of the fact that you have to pay to submit these applications. Some people are confused and submit the wrong application.
And they got to pay again.
Exactly. Yeah. So
like anything, be educated, ask questions, don't be scared.
Yeah, don't be scared. Ask us if you don't feel comfortable going to the actual website or asking somebody who you don't know. Ask us. Ask
Rigo.
Hey, Rigo. come up to the 49th Ward. You know, send an email to the alderman's office, and we'll try and connect you with the right people. It's you know, we're all in this together at this point.
So I also know too, like for example, if you're not in the city of Chicago, we mentioned that the city of Chicago is a sanctuary city. But you still might get people that, let's say, are working and they get, let's say, an immigration official comes by. What can they do and can't they do? And what rights do you have as an immigrant?
That's a good question, right? So, I'm always wary about this. You know, especially I don't know if you guys have heard about the DOJ investigation report that really came out and showed that a lot of CPD officers tend to abuse their powers.
That's another topic.
You know what I mean? I don't want to get too much into that. But as a sanctuary city, they shouldn't be asking you about your immigration status. This is not a question that should be coming up.
They shouldn't, or they can't?
You know what? I don't want to make any kind of comments because I'm not a legal expert, but they shouldn't be asking you about that. If that comes up, you always have the right to not say anything and take your chances. And I personally, not as a member of the Democratic Party of 49th Ward, not as anybody with any kind of legal experience, I would say take your chances and get a lawyer of any kind. If you can, I would not say anything regarding that. Should they ask you about anything about that? If they do try and take you into custody, you can ask them, what are they charging you with? And then they should respond. You can ask them, are you arresting me? And if they're not arresting you, you can walk away because they're not arresting you. And those are the precautions I would take. Those are the precautions I've taken, and I'm not undocumented. Yeah. But just because of the way police relations are with the community right now, should an officer come approach me and start asking me questions, I'll ask if they're arresting me, and I'll walk away and I'll take my chances.
So those are the two questions: what are you charging me for, and are you arresting?
And are you arresting me?
Okay.
On that or anything? I mean,
on anything.
Yeah, if they're just harassing you, are you arresting me? No?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it's like that whole fear thing again. Like, I just think about myself. Like, oh my God, if I were to, like, cops would ever come and all of a sudden they start, like, grabbing my, I'm like, okay, like, whatever.
You don't know what to do or what to say.
Right. But I don't have the mindset, like, I am documented, like, I was born here, whatever. So I don't have that
so
fear,
imagine if you're undocumented, and you feel that.
And to say, are you arresting me? What are you charging me? Like, I don't know. That confidence is that lost. Then.
Which is why we want to put that in.
Don't be afraid. Yeah. They shouldn't even be asking you this. If I would, I think a lot of people even get themselves in trouble because they are afraid. They see a cop standing on the corner, they get a little shifty. They get a little uncomfortable. I know I get uncomfortable. So what I've started doing is I high five the officers on my corners. I also go to my CAPS meetings. So that's meetings where community representatives get to meet with the officers in their area and learn their names, see what crimes are like. If you can also attend those. But I high five my officers, and they're like, "Oh, okay, this guy feels good about police," and it's not necessarily the case. But they know,
just trying to create a relationship.
Know who your officers are, and let them know you're not up to any problems. I'm just trying to go to work. I'm just trying to go to school, go home.
Exactly.
And they think you're less of a thug, right?
Threat or I mean, I have a lot of friends that are police officers, and they tell us that all the time. It's just, hey, we're human beings as well. And then I'm sure that's a whole nother discussion. I'm trying to get these guys to come into the show. But on a daily basis, they're living with that in the back of their mind that somebody might be trying to do something to them.
Right.
So let's let's be proactive and actually show them that we're not there as a threat. Right. So aside from a police officer going up to you and asking you if your status,
it's
they
actually
don't really have to.
They don't have to, and they shouldn't have to. And it's my understanding that a lot of the cops I've talked to don't want to. Right? Yeah. Like that's paperwork.
Exactly. I don't feel bad as a cop. Like now that I know what the hell, now I have to do something about it.
Now I got to do something about it. You know what I mean?
I got to submit to the report.
It can be lengthy. It can be a lengthy process, and they don't want to do that. And I swear, with the DOJ report even coming out, there are some good guys there. I've known a few of them. I'm sure you have as well, Christian. But yeah, these aren't all bad apples. But as you know, one thing that this kind of brings to mind is another person we had on this panel was Norman White, and he's a hate crime advocate for the City of Chicago's Commission on Human Relations. Okay. And what they do is they try to help bridge that gap between the city, the police, and these immigrants to know what their rights are and what their services are, right? So what they started talking about is, what is a hate crime? Big topic that got thrown around after the whole kidnapping situation, and now with the Trump administration going around, like, what is a hate crime? How do you define that? For the city of Chicago, and I also believe for the state of Illinois, a hate crime is when there's some form of discrimination based off of not only actual but perceived race, gender, sex, sexual identity, place of origin, which also
religion in there too?
Religion's in there as well, disability, those kinds of things. So for the city of Chicago and Illinois, it has to be some kind of prejudice on that fact, and then also some kind of crime was committed, right? So somebody could walk by and call me a wetback, but if they don't do anything to me, then we're not talking about a hate crime here. Now, if somebody assaults me and starts calling me a wetback or a beaner or anything like that, we got a different story. Now, as an undocumented immigrant, one may not feel comfortable reporting that, telling the police that. You can reach out to the City of Chicago's Commission on Human Relations, and you can file a report with them, and they will connect you with whoever you need to be connected with, and they'll walk you through this process. So they'll go to court with you. They'll call on the neighborhood to kind of come together, and they'll speak with people to make you feel comfortable.
So instead of going to the police because of that whole fear,
the whole fear.
Here's another resource.
Here's another resource.
Still do something about it.
Right.
Without that fear.
Right. And they'll talk to the police, and if need be, they'll connect you with the police.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need to necessarily go that point. It doesn't necessarily need to bring up any of your documentation status, because again, this is actual or perceived, right? They can perceive you to be an undocumented immigrant. They don't need to know you're an undocumented immigrant. That is a totally different situation. And I think that's important. So if something does happen to you, if somebody attacks you, and that's not uncommon today after, once the election happened, before the election happened, these are very serious issues, and police can't do anything if they don't know about it, right? So that's one way to kind of go about that. And then we also had Daisy Funes, who's with Centro Romero, and they do a lot of those same services we've already kind of talked about. So
I've heard of them.
Yeah. So just get
Centro Romero, you said?
Centro Romero. Okay. And they're far north side. If I can find some more resources to share with the whole city. Again, I'm based out of Rogers Park, so I
think that's where we sent a lot of our, let's say, clients, more or less.
When you were
when it got shut down, we were like, here are the other places, but they're really far away from you.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Centro Romero is a great resource. They do a lot of stuff for the youth, with kids, with adults. They also try and teach different languages so that you can start working on this naturalization process. So people who speak different languages can learn English. So people who know English can learn other languages to help these people out.
Right. Because the test has to be. Well, there's some what do you call it? I forget the word, but it has to be done in English.
It has to be done in English. You're
there's some exceptions. That's the word. Okay. But that's like if you're like 65 and older, and I'm not going to get into that. But majority people applying for naturalization, the test has to be done in English.
Yeah. So and those were the big things we wanted people to know about. Is listen, you can get organized. You can become naturalized to be a citizen. You don't have to be afraid of the cops. If you are afraid of the cops, there are other resources for you. But get educated, get organized, and do what you can to become a citizen. Because right now we need everybody to be on the same page, to be safe, and to be working together.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Especially because of the situation that we might be facing in a couple of months. There's power in the people. I guess the other question that I had too, and I've seen this before. I've heard it in a bunch of different radio stations, and we always say the whole beware, of people that are trying to make money off of you. I was talking to my dad about this yesterday, and I was like, what are some good questions? And he brought up some stuff that used to happen back in the day, back in the 70s, 80s, where, there was the notary publics will charge people, hey, $500 and I could get you to become a citizen. Right. And that paperwork will never happen. That person will move to another part and they will never hear them. Nowadays, it's a little bit harder to do that because of social media. You can find someone really easy. But what do you recommend? Like, what is a sign that someone should look for to know that they're actually legit? That they can help them out. Well,
so first off, you don't want to talk to just any stranger, right? You don't want to want to go up to just anybody. They do have to be a registered. I'm trying to remember. So the City of Chicago website has this information about what a business has to do in order to be able to offer these services and charge for them if need be. If not, you can look into that. But they have to be a business. I think they have to have been doing business for a certain amount of years. They have to put in clear language that they offer these immigration services. Like, it can't be some kind of shady deal, or you don't go to you don't go to a laundromat and then all of a sudden want immigration services there. It's got to be very clear and very obvious understanding that this is what they do. I guess that's the thing. I don't want to say it's common sense because not a lot of people know that.
Right.
But you might hear it from so and so. So and so might tell you, "Oh, this person is really good." Because in our communities, right, Latino communities, it's all about who you know. You know what I'm saying? Like you might, mi primo, my cousin's friend knows this person, and you end up meeting at a laundromat, and they say they're a lawyer. They never even study that.
They never know.
And then they charge them $2,000, $3,000. They're thinking they're gonna get paperwork, and it never happens.
So that's my question. So, like I said, I didn't know too much. I was slowly starting to learn just a lot of just the laws behind immigration, and there's a lot of just stuff changing. So it's a lot. So kudos to anyone who's an immigration lawyer and all of that. But my question is, what information is accessible to anyone free of charge? What type of information can people get? So that way they know if all of a sudden people start charging.
What would you need a lawyer for?
They should know, oh, you know what, I can get this information for free, or I should not be being charged for this.
You know what? Because it's so different on a case by case basis and where you're coming from, I wouldn't assume anything, or I wouldn't say, oh well, I don't need help with this whatsoever. I think if it was that simple, we would have a lot more people becoming naturalized and going through that. I would say go to one of these locations, talk with them, and ask them what you would need a lawyer for, and they can tell you, because they can tell you up front, well, okay, well, can we charge you for this? Can we charge you for that? And they'll be upfront with that. Don't sign anything until you actually find out what you're doing. Don't give any money until you actually know what you're paying for and what's going through that process. But the most important thing is to not be afraid to go there and ask the right questions. And I'm sorry if that's like unclear. I'm not the immigration expert. I'm somebody who's trying to connect these people with the services.
For sure. Yeah.
So I know a lot of times we might have this other fear, right? A lot of undocumented immigrants might have this fear of living with someone that has papers, right?
Yeah.
And let's say they find out that this person's undocumented. What do you know by any chance what liability that person has by living with the undocumented person and they're already known in the system or whatever? I don't know if does that question make sense at all?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know what liabilities they would have living with that person, particularly because you can never know, right? Unless somebody tells you. And if somebody does tell you, you never told me this unless we recorded this, kind of a deal. I don't necessarily know of any particular liabilities you would have, because again, that's just how, what would you know? I would say definitely double check with an immigration lawyer, but I don't think there's any liability on you. You're not, unless hold on, I guess the only situation I could think of is there's one documented person in a household, and you have 2 or 3 families living with you in a building, and then it may seem like you're trying to traffic individuals across or anything like that. In which case, you may have liability for that going on.
Big time.
You would consult an immigration lawyer, but that's not uncommon, right? To have 3 families living under one roof,
right?
And then I would imagine you would know at that point though that they were undocumented, and not to kind of share that information. That's something I would consult with an immigration lawyer. But unless it's a situation like that where you have like 3 different families living under one roof, I don't think you as an individual would have too much vulnerability or liability for that.
Now, with that question, have you heard of or been across a situation where a landlord might kick somebody out because they're undocumented? What can someone do in that situation?
Yeah, so City of Chicago has a lot of landlord-tenant laws, and they can't just be kicking you out for no reason. In fact, I had a buddy of mine recently who the landlord didn't want to pay the heating costs. So you guys know how cold it. Well, except for this weekend where it warmed up, but
it was like
how cold
60 degrees.
It's 60 degrees. But it can be pretty cold around this time of year. So he tried to not pay the heating bills. The apartment got really cold. They didn't want to do anything about it. And so the landlord was like, listen, I'm going to kick you out if you don't pay your rent. My friend was like, well, I'm not paying rent if you're not fixing the heating, kind of a situation. So you can call 311 and have them actually take a regulated test of the temperature. And they can tell the landlord, you got to fix this. This is ridiculous. And they can also officially say, you're not paying rent for this time.
Now, if the situation does come up where someone is getting kicked out because they're undocumented, who can they call?
You can call Chicago police to tell them that your landlord's trying to kick you out without just cause. And as a sanctuary city, this we're not prosecuting you for federal immigration laws. So based on City of Chicago laws, you can't just kick me out.
Because I'm sure to do with the immigration.
It's got nothing to do with immigration.
You can't just kick me out for no reason.
You can't just kick me out.
And some of these questions I'm getting it from listeners are texting me and all that on my phone, but I got it over here on my laptop. So some of these questions are coming from some of our listeners of things that they've heard, or things that they've been facing themselves, So, for example, that story itself was a real big deal because they didn't know what to do. And if they called the cops, they didn't know whether or not they were going to get deported for saying that the person was kicking them out. So I think the safe bet will be, hey, calling them because they're kicking you out.
Call them because they're kicking you out.
Not because you're undocumented or whatever. Just call because you're getting kicked out because you do have rights as a tenant.
As a tenant, you have rights, and then if it comes up, tell them this is a sanctuary city, and if they start taking you away, make sure one of your loved ones, whoever's living with you, a neighbor, knows that to reach out to the alderman, to reach out to your state senator, to reach out to your state representative, and say, hey, this is not supposed to be happening. Help us out.
Now, what about in the labor area, right? So let's say you're an employer is going to fire you because you're undocumented, right? So I'm not well versed on this, but I'm sure for an employer to hire you, you need to go through the I forgot the name of the actual verification.
Right, there's
E-Verify
or I'm not sure what the verification system is, but
is that here in Chicago as well?
You know what? I believe because that goes through a federal program. I don't know that you have that many protections there. Because I think they typically do make, unless you were to have a fake Social Security number or something like that. I don't think you have a whole lot of rights or protections there. So I would be more cautious around the workplace, especially about bringing that kind of stuff up. Yeah. And just to make it clear, I would not go advertising that you're undocumented if you are undocumented. Yeah. That's just the state. That's just the state we're living in right now.
What about, so I mean, and not that I don't think the kids that I work with listen to our podcast because it's just a younger generation, but like I have a lot of students that they are scared. Mm-hmm. They are, frightened that they're going to end up alone because their parents are going to be deported. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what to tell them. Right. Like, because they think that the police are going to come knocking on their doors, arrest their parents, and deport them back to where they're from.
I think going back to the sanctuary city is such a thing that, I mean, I didn't know, and I think it's a good thing to fall back on. Like, they can't, the
sanctuary city.
We're a sanctuary city.
Yeah.
So.
And I've heard that term before thrown around a lot. I just didn't understand the how deep it is, and how much, how grateful we should be that we live in Chicago.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It is one of those where let's say if you lived in a city down south or something, it was not a sanctuary city. You would be
Do you know of one? A city that's not safe?
There's a lot actually.
I think
Arizona, anything in Arizona.
So I used to live in Arizona. They weren't a sanctuary city. They in fact have we used to call them 287 G men based on the policy they had down there, and they would go knocking on doors, kicking people out, deporting them. A few of my friends were citizens, and they got kicked out because they didn't have identification to show that they were citizens.
Right. That's what my kids are deathly afraid of.
Yeah. Don't be afraid of that in Chicago. Don't be afraid of that. I believe in LA they're also a sanctuary city, and I think New York City is a sanctuary city. Find out if you're in a sanctuary city. If you're not, look into your local laws and your local rights. Even talk to the police department and find out, are you going to be prosecuting this? Are you going to be pushing this a lot? But for the kids, let them know it's a sanctuary city. Let them know Chicago. We're not knocking on doors. We're not going to be doing that. It's not going to happen.
What is then the just way that the authorities can come in and deport someone? Exactly, on what grounds can that happen legally?
I mean, so we're looking at crimes, right? So cops can come into your house if they have reason to believe that there's a crime happening in your building, and that's somebody getting assaulted, somebody getting a murder happening, domestic battery charges, things like that. And even then, they can't come into your unit, your house without a warrant or just cause. So like they look through the window, they see a body on the ground, kind of a deal. And you don't have to let them in. You don't have to open the door. In fact, I wouldn't open the door unless they said they had a warrant. If you were going to if you were going to eventually let them in, maybe because you don't want to have bad problems with the cops, I would say unless you know who these officers are, you should be looking out for your best interest, not necessarily what could potentially happen. But in addition to the kids, I would also say to try and encourage their parents to look into naturalization, right? So I know a lot of folks don't do it. They feel like it's too complicated. The process is too hard. It may cost too much money. I think it's worth it. I think it's genuinely worth it while you live in a sanctuary city, while you have kids here and you don't want the family to be split up, to look into the naturalization process, find out what that process is to make it happen, and get it done. And then tell the kids to get their parents to tell them to get it done, because we don't want that to happen.
And I think that's where then the problem starts, because, like, for example, I just threw out the USCIS.gov website, right? But a lot of parents are just so illiterate when it comes to technology, computers. So kind of you almost have to put that responsibility onto these kids. And it shouldn't be, but yet it's a
lot of stress for these
kids. Right. And so it's like, the kids don't know, okay, I go into the website, then what? Like, what do I click? They don't know. And so then expecting the parents, they're like, I don't know what I'm doing either. And I even, the students, these are grown adults in their 40s, 50s, 60s applying for naturalization. And at that point, just teaching in general and retaining information is already a million times harder. So to tell them, oh yeah, just go online and
what about
download this
directing
form.
them to resources that, like, where you used to work? Like,
right.
hey, well, have your parents go here, take a class, and learn about it.
Right, and that's like through word of mouth.
The only problem, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here,
yeah.
that I see, and coming from myself as well, is we always tend to send them to someone else, right? Yeah. And then that person sends them to someone else, and then you get tired of that, and then you also feel like you're giving away too much information, right? You're trying to retain that, because most Latinos, right? We tend to be very to ourselves. We don't want to tell them our business.
Right.
So my question is, and I guess what I really want to do from this discussion is I want to give people resources that they could reach out to. So if you had, like, if you could say what would be the one-stop shop for someone, what would it be?
Go to your alderman. Our alderman up in the 49th Ward, Joe Moore, was the one of the architects of having this immigration rights meeting that we had in the neighborhood.
Nice.
He worked with other representatives we have in our district, right? So he Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, State Rep Kelly Cassidy, State Senator Heather Staines, and it was the Cook County Commissioner who came through and really helped put this together, along with Northside Community Resources, another place that tries to help make sure people have the right rights or know about their rights. But call your alderman, especially if you are documented or you are a citizen, and let them know, this is the community we live in. There's a lot of undocumented folks here who want to know their rights. If I remember right, I know Luis Gutierrez is throwing in a similar event in a week or two, just so people know what their rights are.
Sorry. Yeah. Do you guys do maybe in the 49th Ward, or do you know anywhere else? Do you guys do like naturalization workshops or immigration workshops? Whether it's to bring people of the community, hey, come out, we're gonna educate you on this, or here's because we used to do workshops where we have a bunch of like people helping us. Where we're gonna help you
just that one
put your papers together. We're gonna help you fill out the application. I'm gonna tell you what family name means, and we're gonna get all your paperwork together. We're gonna get you the right form. Like it was an all-day workshop. Do you guys do that?
You know what? We haven't done that. We have a huge huge immigrant population there, and not just Spanish-speaking immigrants. And we haven't yet to do that. I know we've directed people to Central Romero when they do stuff like that, when they offer those services. I think that's probably the go-to option for us, but maybe that's the route we're going to take now, and that's something I'll definitely talk to my alderman about, because I hadn't thought to, let's go ahead and do this naturalization workshop. I am a little concerned about how big it would be.
Yeah, because we used to do them like in it, just know people. Like, can we use the basement of your church? Yeah.
That's where we did our event.
Grassroots flyers, give them out to people, and hope for the best people. And they did. We didn't have like a giant crowd, but we had people coming in all day. Yeah,
and you know what? If anybody has these ideas, I'd love for you guys to put my Twitter out there and my email out there so people can reach out to me.
Where can they reach out?
So you can reach on Twitter if you're Twitter friendly, then you can reach me at Shirigo CHI_RIGO 606. If you want to reach me by email, it's Rodrigo, RODRIGO, Fernandez, FERNANDEZ 2013 @gmail.com. Send me your questions. I'm happy to pass them along to whoever I can. I'm not an immigration attorney. I'm not well versed in that. I'm just a guy from the neighborhood who wants to help.
who wants to help,
and
that's good.
And I'll do
people
that.
Need is people that are willing to help. You're willing to help people in your community. Anyone else that just needs to help. Right. That's what we need.
Any way that we could put out the word out there that can help our people and help the fear, because I could just imagine how it is to live every single day in fear that you don't know whether or not you're going to be in this country another day. So, we're kind of getting close to the hour here. So I wanted to thank you for coming in. And we're definitely going to put those social media
links on.
Well, I'll give you all the links. I'll give you all the links.
I know we asked you a lot of questions. Is there anything you want to put out there for our listeners to hear? Anything?
You know what? I said it earlier. I'll say it again, and I'll sound like I'm on repeat or whatever. But call your alderman's office. Make sure they start setting up these events for you if you want it to happen. We do it because our alderman is very involved with our community, and the Democratic Party of the 49th Ward is very involved with the community, and we try and get more people in. We flyer, we're on social media, we send out emails pretty regularly. We held a rally recently with Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky and some other individuals who had these resources available. Excuse me. And we also all got together at a rally at the Women's March that just happened. Yeah. So we as a neighborhood do this, but we obviously as a neighborhood can't do this for the whole city. Right. So call your alderman, call the local organizations, and set up a meeting. Go there so that they can't ignore you and say, this is what we'd like to do. Other groups have already done this. Yeah. Can we repeat this process here locally and make it happen?
Yeah, mi gente, it's one of those things that we need to take advantage of what we have at our disposal. So if you have any questions, maybe something you don't understand right, maybe you want to talk about this in Spanish. I speak Spanish. Hit me up. You could go to our you could go, comment on this Facebook video, comment on the podcast. We're here for you. We want to be able to give you all the resources that you need. And thank you once again for coming in.
No problem.
I do have a couple of things that I want to plug before we end this podcast. So I'm sure you guys are on Facebook Live. You can see the hat that we have. We've been promoting the hat for a couple of weeks, a week now. We have it available online if you want to go to laverdadltd.com. Some people are asking where that money goes. It does not go to my pocket. I wish it did. It actually goes so that we could get more equipment for this podcast, so that we could set up more events. I know Vfig is actually itching to do some more events, but we need the money, right, to do it. Yeah. So all the proceeds go towards us building this brand and this community, which we call La Verdad, right? So check us out online on www.laverdadltd.com. You can find us and share our podcast via Audio Boom, iTunes, any player that you like to use, whether it's iPhone, Android, whatever, Google Play. That's how Rigo found out about us. Right. So he's one of the guys that listens to the show faithfully, so I'm glad that we were able to bring him in to talk more about immigration. So, mi gente, once again, on behalf of the whole La Verdad team, we appreciate you guys. We love you guys, and God bless. Peace.